Tonight, we journey back in time. Not to a battlefield stained by war. Not to the court of a mighty king. Not to a temple overflowing with treasures. Tonight, we travel somewhere far more extraordinary. A place built not for soldiers. Not for rulers. Not for conquerors. But for ideas. For curiosity. For knowledge itself. And as darkness settles gently across the ancient Mediterranean world, we find ourselves standing before one of the greatest mysteries in human history. The lost Library of Alexandria. A place so legendary that even after more than 2,000 years, its name still stirs something deep within the human soul. A place that once held the dreams, discoveries, questions, and wisdom of countless generations. A place that promised humanity something almost impossible. The chance to gather all knowledge under one roof. And tonight, beneath the soft glow of moonlight, we are going to walk through it together. But before we begin, I want you to stay with me until the very end of this journey. Because waiting for you in our final chapter is a fascinating discovery that most people never learn about the Library of Alexandria. A surprising truth that completely changes how many historians think about its legacy and why its story still matters in our lives today. And while you're listening, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think was humanity's greatest loss when the library disappeared? Was it scientific knowledge? Ancient history? Forgotten stories? Or something even greater? Leave your answer in the comments below. Now, take a slow breath. Allow the noise of the modern world to drift a little farther away. The emails can wait. The notifications can wait. Tomorrow can wait. For the next little while, there is only the sound of distant waves, the glow of ancient lanterns, and the whisper of history calling us backward through time. Imagine the sea before you, dark and endless. Moonlight dances across the surface like liquid silver. The night air carries the scent of salt and distant fires. Somewhere in the darkness, a ship creaks gently against its moorings. Its long voyage is finally over. The sailors aboard have crossed dangerous waters. They have survived storms, pirates, uncertain winds. And now, at last, they have reached the most famous city in the ancient world, Alexandria. As the vessel approaches the harbor, a towering beacon rises from the darkness. Its flame burns high above the sea. Steady, brilliant, guiding travelers home. For weary sailors, that light means safety. For merchants, it means opportunity. For scholars, it means something even more valuable: knowledge. Because beyond that harbor lies a city unlike any other on earth. A city where languages from distant lands mingle in crowded marketplaces. A city where philosophers debate beneath marble columns. A city where mathematicians challenge the boundaries of human understanding. A city where astronomers study the heavens and attempt to unravel the secrets of the universe. And hidden within that city stands a place that feels almost mythical today: the Great Library. As we begin our walk through the streets of Alexandria, the city feels alive even in the quiet hours of the night. Torches flicker along stone roads. Their golden light dances across white walls and polished columns. The sounds of the harbor slowly fade behind us. Footsteps echo softly in the distance. A cool breeze drifts through the streets. Above us, thousands of stars shine over Egypt just as they did more than 2,000 years ago. For a moment, it feels as though time itself has stopped. And perhaps that is why the story of the library continues to captivate us. Because it represents something deeply human. The desire to understand. The desire to learn. The desire to leave something behind that will outlive us. Think about that for a moment. Every scroll stored within those walls was created by someone who hoped their words would survive. A poet who wanted future generations to hear their voice. A scientist who wanted others to build upon a discovery. A historian who wanted the past to be remembered. A philosopher who wanted their questions to live beyond their own lifetime. Tonight, we are not simply visiting a building. We are stepping into the hopes and dreams of countless people who lived long before us. People who laughed. People who struggled. People who loved. People who stared at the same moon hanging above us now and wondered what the future would become. And perhaps the most haunting thought of all is this. Many of their voices have been silent for centuries. Many of their stories vanished. Many of their words were never heard again. Yet somehow, through fragments of history, through surviving records, through archaeology and careful scholarship, we can still follow their footsteps into the darkness. And tonight, we will. Together. So dim the lights. Get comfortable. Allow your mind to wander through ancient corridors lined with thousands upon thousands of scrolls. Imagine the soft glow of oil lamps reflecting across polished stone floors. Imagine the scent of papyrus and ink. Imagine standing inside a place where humanity gathered the wisdom of the known world. A place where every shelf held another mystery waiting to be discovered. A place where knowledge itself felt sacred. The gates are opening. The city is growing quiet behind us. And our journey into the lost Library of Alexandria is about to begin. The great gates stand open before us now. Behind us, the city of Alexandria slowly disappears into the night. The sounds of merchants and sailors fade into silence. Ahead lies something altogether different. A sanctuary of thought. A monument dedicated not to military victories or royal power, but to knowledge itself. Oil lamps cast a warm glow across stone floors. Shadows dance along marble columns. The air feels almost sacred. For this is not merely a library. It is one of the most ambitious intellectual projects in human history. And tonight, we discover how it began. To understand the Library of Alexandria, we must first understand the world that created it. The age of Alexander the Great had recently transformed the ancient world. Although his empire fragmented after his death, ideas could now travel across vast distances more easily than before. Cultures exchanged knowledge. Trade connected distant regions. And in Alexandria, a bold vision emerged. The rulers of Egypt's Ptolemaic dynasty wanted their city to become the intellectual center of the world. Their goal was astonishingly ambitious. They sought to gather the knowledge of humanity into one place. Poetry, history, science, philosophy, anything they could acquire. Even today, the scale of that dream feels remarkable. As we move through the halls, storage rooms appear on either side. Within them rest countless scrolls, each one carrying a voice from somewhere in the known world. Some arrived from Greece, others from Egypt. Others traveled from distant lands connected through trade and diplomacy. The library became a meeting place for civilizations. Knowledge from different cultures existed side by side. Ideas crossed borders even when people could not. The lamps flicker softly as we walk deeper into the complex. Nearby, scribes work patiently copying texts onto fresh papyrus. Their task is slow and demanding. Every line must be preserved with care. Without these copyists, many ancient works might never have survived long enough to influence future generations. History often remembers kings and generals. Yet civilizations are sometimes preserved by quiet individuals working beneath the glow of oil lamps. There is something deeply moving about that. Empires rise and fall. Borders change. Buildings crumble. But ideas can travel across centuries. A thought written by one person can reach another thousands of years later. And that is exactly what the library sought to achieve. To preserve humanity's collective memory. As we continue onward, we enter a courtyard open to the night sky. The Mediterranean breeze drifts through the columns. Somewhere in spaces like these, scholars gather to discuss mathematics, astronomy, medicine, geography, literature, and philosophy. Imagine listening to those conversations. Questions that fascinated them still fascinate us today. How large is the Earth? What are the stars? How should societies be governed? What makes a good life? The search for answers echoed through Alexandria long before modern universities existed. Perhaps that is why this place feels different from other ancient sites. A palace reminds us of rulers. A battlefield reminds us of conflict. But the library reminds us of curiosity. Of humanity's endless desire to understand the world. And despite the centuries that separate us from Alexandria, we are not so different from the people who studied here. We still ask questions. We still seek knowledge. We still wonder about our place in the universe. Before we continue deeper into the library, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could recover one lost work from the ancient world, what would it be? A lost history? A scientific discovery? A forgotten philosophy? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this peaceful exploration of history, consider subscribing to Serene Echoes. For now, the lamps continue to glow. The corridors stretch onward. And somewhere ahead, we are about to uncover one of Alexandria's most fascinating secrets. Because the librarians did not simply wait for knowledge to arrive. They went looking for it. They became hunters of knowledge. And their methods were unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. The night grows deeper around us. Beyond the walls of the library, Alexandria sleeps beneath a blanket of stars. The harbor has grown quiet. The marketplace has fallen silent. Only the distant sound of waves reaches us now. Inside these halls, however, another kind of journey is taking place. A journey carried by scrolls, ideas, and knowledge gathered from across the ancient world. Because every manuscript on these shelves has traveled. And behind this extraordinary collection stands one of history's most ambitious projects. The librarians of Alexandria were not merely caretakers. They were hunters of knowledge. As we continue through the softly illuminated corridors, imagine the challenge they faced. Their goal was simple to describe but nearly impossible to achieve. Gather the knowledge of the world. In an age before printing presses, every text had to be copied by hand. Every manuscript existed in fragile form. A fire, flood, or war could erase it forever. The rulers of Alexandria understood this. And so they launched one of the greatest collecting efforts in history. Picture the Mediterranean world more than 2,000 years ago. Ships move between ports. Merchants carry goods across continents. Ideas travel alongside cargo. And among those travelers, agents of Alexandria search for scrolls. Ancient sources describe a remarkable policy. According to several accounts, books brought into Alexandria could be copied for the library. Historians debate exactly how often this occurred, but the stories reveal something important. knowledge was considered valuable enough for a kingdom to actively pursue it. Imagine arriving in Alexandria carrying a rare manuscript. Perhaps it contains poetry, astronomical observations, a local history. Soon, your work becomes part of one of the greatest collections ever assembled. As we pass another chamber lined with shelves, we can almost picture the result. Thousands of scrolls gathered from across the known world. Philosophy, medicine, history, poetry, geography, scientific observations. Ancient estimates vary widely, and the true number remains unknown. Yet historians agree on one point. The library was enormous. Unlike anything that had existed before it. There is something moving about that image. Each scroll represents a human voice reaching across time. Someone who observed the world and wished to share what they learned. As we continue deeper into the library, we enter a chamber where scribes once worked. Oil lamps glow softly above wooden tables. Bundles of papyrus rest nearby. This is where preservation became reality. Collecting texts was only the beginning. Every manuscript had to be copied carefully, line by line. The work demanded patience and extraordinary attention to detail. Without these scribes, countless works might never have survived. History often remembers kings and conquerors. Yet knowledge is frequently preserved by quiet individuals working in silence. The people of Alexandria understood something profound. Civilization survived not only through monuments, but through memory. And memory must be protected. As we step into an open courtyard, the Mediterranean breeze drifts through the columns. Above us, the stars shine brightly. The same stars studied by ancient astronomers. The same stars that guided sailors across the sea. Somewhere in spaces like these, scholars compared texts, translated foreign works, and exchanged ideas from different cultures. This may have been the library's greatest achievement. Not simply collecting information, but connecting civilizations. Ideas from Egypt, Greece, and beyond could meet in a single place. Knowledge crossed borders long before modern technology existed. And those exchanges helped shape the future. Many people imagine the ancient world as isolated. Alexandria reminds us that it was often surprisingly connected. Curiosity brought people together. Learning crossed cultures. And progress emerged from that exchange. As we pause beside a window overlooking the sleeping city, take a moment to appreciate the vision behind this place. No computers. No printing presses. No modern transportation. Only patience, determination, and a belief that knowledge was worth preserving. More than 2,000 years later, that vision still inspires us. If this part of the story fascinated you, let me know below. And here's a question for tonight's journey. If you could walk into the Library of Alexandria and read one lost scroll, what would you choose? A forgotten history? A vanished scientific discovery? A lost work of philosophy? Share your answer in the comments. For now, our footsteps continue through the quiet halls. The lamps burn softly. The shelves stretch into the darkness. And somewhere ahead await the brilliant minds who transformed Alexandria into a beacon of learning. Because collecting knowledge was only the beginning. The true magic of the library came from the scholars who gathered here. And in the next chapter, we will meet them. The lamps continue to burn softly as we move deeper into the heart of the library. Behind us lie endless shelves filled with the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world. Yet a library, no matter how large, is only a collection of scrolls without the people who bring it to life. And that is where the true wonder of Alexandria begins. The greatest treasure hidden within these walls was never the manuscripts themselves. It was the minds that came to read them, to question them, to build upon them. Tonight, we meet some of the remarkable thinkers who walked these halls more than 2,000 years ago. People whose ideas still shape our world today. Imagine scholars gathered beneath marble columns discussing mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, and geography. The air is filled with questions. And history often advances through questions more than answers. One of the most famous scholars associated with Alexandria was Euclid. Around 300 BCE, he organized mathematical knowledge into a work known as the Elements. His achievement was not simply mathematical. It was logical. Euclid showed how complex truths could be built from simple principles through careful reasoning. The result became one of the most influential textbooks in history. For more than 2,000 years, students continued learning from it. A quiet work of thought surviving longer than many empires. As we continue walking, another figure emerges from the shadows of history. Eratosthenes, a scholar and librarian who asked a deceptively simple question. How large is the Earth? Using observations of shadows in different cities and the distance between them, he calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy. No satellites. No modern instruments. Only observation, mathematics, and curiosity. Standing on the surface of a planet and measuring its size through reason alone remains one of the most extraordinary achievements of the ancient world. Nearby, other scholars turned their attention to the heavens. Among them was Aristarchus of Samos. While most people believed Earth stood at the center of the universe, Aristarchus proposed a different idea. He suggested that Earth moved around the sun. The theory failed to gain acceptance in his lifetime, but centuries later similar ideas would help transform humanity's understanding of the cosmos. Alexandria provided a place where such bold ideas could be explored, debated, and preserved. The cool night breeze drifts through an open archway. Maps cover wooden tables. Travel accounts are compared. Distances measured. The scholars of Alexandria sought to understand the world beyond their horizons. There is something deeply human in that effort. The desire to understand where we are and how the world works. As we walk further, we begin to realize something extraordinary. The library was not merely preserving knowledge. It was creating it. Ideas did not simply arrive here. They evolved here. Scholars challenged one another, corrected errors, and proposed new theories. In many ways, Alexandria functioned like a modern research institution. A place where learning was a living process. The flickering lamps cast long shadows across the floor. For a moment, imagine all the conversations that have been lost. The debates never recorded. The discoveries never written down. History preserves only fragments. Yet even those fragments reveal a world alive with intellectual energy. A world where curiosity was celebrated. And perhaps that realization feels comforting. Because despite the centuries separating us from Alexandria, we remain connected to those scholars. We still ask questions. We still seek understanding. We still look at the stars and wonder. The tools have changed, but the curiosity remains. The same spark that drove Eratosthenes to measure the earth and Aristarchus to rethink the heavens continues to inspire people today. In that sense, Alexandria never truly disappeared. Its spirit survives wherever knowledge is shared and questions are welcomed. Before we continue our journey, I would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these ancient scholars fascinates you most? Euclid, Eratosthenes, Aristarchus, or perhaps another thinker from history? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this peaceful exploration of the ancient world, consider subscribing to Serene Echoes. Because while these great scholars transformed human understanding, there are still mysteries hidden among the shelves. Forgotten stories, unexpected discoveries, secrets woven into the history of the library itself. And in the next chapter, we will uncover them. The deeper we move into the library, the quieter everything becomes. The distant sounds of Alexandria fade behind stone walls. The flickering lamps no longer feel like simple sources of light. They feel like guardians watching over knowledge gathered from across the ancient world. And now we arrive at a side of the library rarely described by ancient writers. Not the world of famous scholars and grand discoveries, but the world of daily life. The routines that allowed knowledge to survive. Because behind every great institution are countless small human efforts. Imagine the rhythm of life here. Scholars arrive before sunrise. Others remain long after sunset. Some spend decades within these halls reading, copying, and studying. The library becomes more than a building. It becomes a living center of learning. One of the most important roles belonged to the scribes. Without them, the library could not have existed. Scrolls were fragile. Papyrus decayed. Texts had to be copied constantly to survive. Day after day, scribes sat beneath oil lamps carefully reproducing manuscripts. Their work demanded patience and precision. A single error could alter meaning. Yet most of these individuals remain anonymous. Their names are lost. Only their work survives. As we continue, we enter what may have been a reading room. Scholars sit at tables surrounded by scrolls. Some read quietly. Others compare different versions of the same text. Corrections are noted. Interpretations debated. This careful examination of manuscripts helped lay foundations for later scholarly methods still used today. The library was not simply preserving texts. It was studying them, questioning them, trying to understand them more deeply. Another remarkable feature of Alexandria was its diversity. Within these halls, works from many cultures existed side by side. Greek, Egyptian, Hebrew, Persian, and other traditions met in a single intellectual space. Ideas were translated, compared, and shared. Knowledge crossed cultural boundaries. The library became a meeting place for human thought itself. As we move deeper into the complex, storage chambers stretch before us. Rows of scrolls are carefully organized and labeled. Finding a specific text could take time. Discovery was never instant. It required patience. Yet perhaps that made each manuscript feel even more valuable. Every recovered text represented a voice from another place and another time. And gradually, we begin to understand the library's deeper purpose. It was not simply storing information. It was protecting memory. In a world where wars, disasters, and time could erase knowledge forever, the library stood as an attempt to preserve humanity's ideas. Imagine holding a scroll in your hands, feeling the texture of papyrus, seeing words written by someone who lived centuries before you. That connection across time is powerful. It reminds us that knowledge is never truly owned. It is inherited, passed from one generation to the next. As we continue through these quiet halls, we begin to see the library differently. Not as a monument of stone and scrolls, but as a fragile effort to protect the thoughts of humanity. A place where every copied line mattered, every preserved text mattered, and every small act of scholarship became a gift to the future. Before we move into the next chapter, take a moment to reflect. What surprises you most about life inside the library? The work of the scribes? The meeting of different cultures? Or the patience required to preserve knowledge in the ancient world? Let me know in the comments below. And if this journey is helping you unwind tonight, consider subscribing to Serene Echoes for more peaceful explorations through history. Because as calm as these halls may seem, some of the most important parts of the library's story remain uncertain. Questions linger. Accounts conflict. Mysteries endure. And in the next chapter, we will step into those mysteries together. The air feels different here. Heavier. Quieter. As though the library itself is holding its breath. We move beyond the reading rooms and deeper into corridors less documented by history. This is where evidence grows thinner. Where historians rely on ancient sources, archaeology, and careful interpretation. We are stepping into the edges of history. Where certainty fades and silence begins. The lamps burn steadily along the walls. Their light stretches across stone floors worn smooth by generations of scholars. Somewhere nearby, the Mausoleum once thrived as a community of learning, where thinkers lived, studied, and debated under royal patronage. Yet here the atmosphere feels different. More private. More reflective. Imagine walking these halls after sunset. Most scholars have departed. Only a few remain. A lamp flickers in a distant room. A reader bends over a scroll. The gentle sound of papyrus being unrolled breaks the silence. In moments like these, knowledge feels deeply personal. Not a public debate, but a quiet conversation between a reader and a text. Ancient libraries were carefully organized. Valuable manuscripts were protected, copied, and cataloged. Knowledge was treated with great seriousness. But it was never beyond question. Texts were compared. Errors corrected. Ideas challenged. The library was not simply preserving knowledge. It was refining it. As we continue, imagine librarians recording entries, scribes repairing damaged passages, and scholars searching for rare works. These small acts formed the foundation of the library's success. Without them, even the greatest texts could have vanished. We enter a larger hall where moonlight filters through high openings. The marble glows softly. It is easy to imagine scholars gathering here to exchange ideas from across the Mediterranean world. Their daily routines remain uncertain, but one thing is clear. Alexandria attracted some of the brightest minds of its age. Ideas moved freely. Knowledge expanded. And the pursuit of understanding became part of everyday life. Perhaps an open courtyard lies ahead. Stars shine overhead. The same stars that guided sailors, inspired astronomers, and raised questions about humanity's place in the universe. What are the stars? How do they move? What laws govern the heavens? These questions filled the minds of Alexandrian scholars. And the library became one of the earliest places where such questions were explored through observation and reason. We should acknowledge that many details of this journey remain uncertain. The exact layout of these rooms. The routines of scholars after dark. The arrangement of study spaces. History preserves only fragments. Yet those fragments reveal a place that was active, dynamic, and intellectually alive. Perhaps that is what makes the library so fascinating. Not only what we know, but what remains unknown. The gaps invite curiosity. The silences invite imagination. And together they remind us that history is often a mosaic with missing pieces. Before we leave this quiet corner of Alexandria, imagine sitting beside a single lamp with a scroll open before you. Outside, the ancient world continues its rhythms. Inside, time seems suspended. What would you choose to study? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're still awake and enjoying this peaceful journey, leave a quiet crescent moon in the comments. Because in the next chapter, we step into the library's greatest mystery. Not how it lived, but how it was lost. And why one of humanity's greatest centers of knowledge slowly disappeared from history. The silence that follows us into this chapter feels different. Heavier. Almost uneasy. As if the library is no longer just a place of knowledge, but a place marked by absence. Here, we leave behind the world of scholars and scribes and step into something far more uncertain. Loss. The fate of the Library of Alexandria remains one of history's greatest mysteries. And one fact is important from the beginning. There is no single confirmed account of its destruction. Instead, historians work with fragments. Different writers. Different centuries. Different explanations. What emerges is not the story of one catastrophe, but of a long decline. The first major event often discussed involves Julius Caesar in 48 BCE. During fighting in Alexandria, fires broke out in parts of the city. Some later sources suggest that scrolls stored near the harbor were damaged or destroyed. However, historians cannot confirm that the main library itself was completely lost at this time. What seems more likely is that Alexandria suffered damage while its scholarly institutions continued to exist. The story did not end there. Over the following centuries, political and economic changes affected the city's intellectual life. Support for scholars fluctuated. Institutions became more vulnerable. Knowledge remained, but the great center that once gathered it all may have gradually weakened. Another important moment came in 391 CE. During religious changes across the Roman Empire, the Serapeum was destroyed. Ancient sources indicate that this site housed a significant collection of texts. While it was not necessarily the original great library, its loss marked another step in the decline of Alexandrian learning. By then, the library founded by the Ptolemies had likely already diminished. What historians see is not one dramatic ending, but a long process of damage, neglect, relocation, and transformation. Later stories claim the library was destroyed during the Arab conquest of Alexandria in the 7th century. Most modern historians consider these accounts unreliable because they appear in much later sources and lack strong supporting evidence. The library, as a unified institution, had likely disappeared long before then. As we stand in this imagined space, it is easy to feel a sense of loss. Yet historians remind us that knowledge itself did not vanish. Many works survived through copies, translations, and scholars in other regions. Greek science, philosophy, and mathematics continued through Byzantine and later Arabic scholarship. Ideas that once lived in Alexandria traveled far beyond Egypt. In that sense, the library did not simply disappear. It dispersed. Its knowledge found new homes and continued shaping the world. And perhaps that is the most important truth. The Library of Alexandria was never only a building. It was an idea. A belief that knowledge is worth collecting, preserving, and sharing. Buildings can be lost. Ideas can endure. Before we leave this chapter, take a moment to reflect. When you think about the library's fate, what stays with you more? The sadness of its loss? Or the realization that much of its knowledge survived in other forms? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're still here with me tonight, leave a quiet crescent moon in the comments. Because in our final chapter, we will explore what remained. The echoes, the fragments, and the lasting legacy of Alexandria in the modern world. We are almost at the end of our journey. We arrive now at the final stretch of our journey. The corridors behind us feel distant, almost like memories within a dream. The library, once alive with voices, debates, footsteps, and the quiet turning of scrolls, now feels like it exists in layers. Some real, some reconstructed, some imagined. And yet, its presence lingers. Not as a single place on a map, but as an echo that refuses to fade. As we stand in this final space, it becomes clear that the story of the Library of Alexandria is not a story with a clean ending. It is not a straight line from creation to destruction. It is something far more human, fragmented, unfinished, and still unfolding in the way it continues to shape how we understand knowledge itself. Because even though the physical institution is gone, its influence is everywhere. We just don't always recognize it. Modern libraries, universities, research institutions, archives, and digital databases all carry traces of the same ambition. The idea that knowledge should be gathered, preserved, organized, shared. This idea did not begin in the modern world. And it did not begin in isolation. It grew over centuries, shaped in part by the legacy of Alexandria. In the centuries after the library's decline, much of Greek scientific and philosophical knowledge survived through careful copying in Byzantine monasteries. Texts that may have once passed through Alexandria were preserved, studied, and transmitted forward. Later, during the Islamic Golden Age, scholars in cities like Baghdad translated, expanded, and critically engaged with Greek works. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy were not only preserved but developed further. In this way, knowledge that once flowed through Alexandria continued its journey across civilizations, transforming as it moved, but never disappearing completely. One of the most powerful reminders of Alexandria's legacy is the survival of mathematical and scientific thought. The works associated with scholars like Euclid and Eratosthenes did not vanish with the library. They were copied, translated, taught, and eventually became foundational texts in both Islamic and European intellectual traditions. Centuries later, during the Renaissance, these ideas re-entered Europe and helped fuel a renewed explosion of scientific discovery. It is a quiet but profound truth. The world we live in today is still shaped by ideas that once passed through the intellectual atmosphere of Alexandria. Not because the library survived physically, but because knowledge is far more resilient than stone. As we walk slowly through these final imagined corridors, the environment begins to feel less like a building and more like a presence. A reminder. A symbol. And symbols often survive longer than structures. The library reminds us of something essential about humanity. That curiosity is one of our most powerful traits. We are a species that asks questions, even when answers are difficult, even when certainty is impossible, even when knowledge is fragile. We continue searching. And perhaps that is why Alexandria still matters. Not because it held all knowledge, but because it tried. In a world without modern technology, without global communication, without printing presses or digital storage, it represented a bold attempt to gather the intellectual heritage of humanity in one place. And even though that attempt was never complete, it changed what people believed was possible. As we reach the end of our journey, imagine the library not as ruins, but as light. Not a physical light, but an intellectual one. A glow that spreads across centuries, reappearing whenever someone studies mathematics for the first time, whenever a researcher compares ancient texts, whenever a scientist builds upon the discoveries of those who came before, whenever a student opens a book and realizes they are part of something much larger than themselves. That is the true legacy of Alexandria. Not preservation alone, but continuation. Before we leave, take a moment to breathe. Let the journey settle quietly within you. Let the images of scrolls, scholars, and moonlit corridors fade gently into stillness. And as you do, I want to thank you for traveling through this ancient world with me. Thank you for spending part of your evening inside the lost Library of Alexandria. If this journey brought you peace, curiosity, or reflection, consider subscribing to Serene Echoes for more peaceful stories from history. And before you go, I would love to know one final thing. If the Library of Alexandria could speak to us today, what do you think it would want humanity to remember most? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're still awake, leave a quiet crescent moon so I know you reached the end of this journey. Tell me where you are listening from tonight. As the last words of this story settle into silence, we arrive at its final message. Not loss, not destruction, but endurance. Because even when great libraries disappear, knowledge does not end. It simply finds new ways to survive. Thank you for spending part of your evening with Serene Echoes. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please subscribe for more peaceful stories from the past. Until next time, rest well and let history whisper you to sleep.